Hi everyone, welcome back to Travel with an Engineer. In our previous episode, we visited Sutter's Fort and we discussed about the life of John Sutter. So perhaps the next natural step is to visit Sutter Creek, which is a small town named after John Sutter. So today we are going to visit Sutter Creek, located in Amador County, California. Sutter Creek is one of the prettiest small town, perhaps the prettiest small town in Gold County, California. Its population is a little over 2,500 people and it is located 45 miles, which is 72 kilometers southeast of Sacramento. So if you want to visit the city, most likely you will be going from Sacramento. And while driving there, the scenery that you will see absolutely depends on the season. I'm visiting the town at the end of the summer, and as you can see, everywhere is yellow. But if you travel this road in winter or spring, the scenery will be entirely different. By the way, this road is Highway 49, which, as we discussed in the previous episode, directly refer to California gold rush of 1849 and the gold miners, which are referred to 49ers. The heart of the town is the main street, along which there are all sorts of specialty shops, gift shops, and antique shops, all located in beautiful Gold Rush era building. So just walking and enjoying the main street worth the travel. My favorites are Chocolate Coffee Shop and Hain and Company Bookstore. Both of them have exquisite interior that are quite unique. As I already mentioned, the town's origin have a lot to do with John Sutter. In 1846, John Sutter sent some of his employees to this region so they can provide timber for the needs of the Sutter's fort. And this was a few years before John Sutter sent James Marshall to Coloma to build the Sutter's Mill, at which point James Marshall found the first gold in Northern California, which started the gold rush. And that can be visited where now is the Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park. So the region was initially used as a source of timber. But after the discovery of gold, John Sutter came to the area and he stayed for a few weeks in the area and did some gold mining along a creek that later named after him, Sutter Creek. And this is how the community that was formed around this creek and later became a town in 1854 was called Sutter Creek. Nowadays, this creek passes through the heart of the city, as you can see here. Although, as I said, I shot this footage at the end of the summer, so the creek is almost dry. By the way, at some point, the town was also referred to as Suttersville. Anyway, as I said, John Sutter stayed in the region for several weeks, but soon he left the area due to unreliability of his labor, because many of them just left him for their own gold prospecting. As I noted in my previous video, the gold miners during the California gold rush did not honor the ownership of John Sutter on his land, and they took over John Sutter's land. So for a couple of years, some 49ers looked for gold in the region that is now Sutter Creek. And they used placer mining method for this purpose. In another video, I will discuss the different method to extract gold, starting with the placer mining, which is basically extracting loose gold pieces from the streams, from the rivers, using pans, rockers, or other more advanced methods. So gold miners look for the gold in Sutter Creek region, but the gold deposits were not especially rich in this region. So there was some mining activity in Sutter Creek, but not as much as many other regions. But what really changed the fortune of the region was the discovery of gold bearing quartz outcrops. Unlike placer mining, that the gold pieces were available free in the riverbeds and stream beds, in gold bearing quartz outcrops, the gold was embedded in hard rocks. So, as we will discuss later, the miners needed to break the rocks and then pulverize them and then separate the gold from the waste rocks. And this was not a personal endeavor, and it's required very capital intense industrial activities. The first such gold mine and mill, called the Lincoln Mine, was established in 1851 in Sutter Creek. And this led to the industrial gold mining or hard rock mining to become the economic lifeline of the region, really for the rest of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. The most important and the most prosperous gold mine in Sutter Creek was the Central Eureka Mine, which I will get back to this mine later on. Some famous and important people got involved and invested in this industry in Sutter Creek and made their fortune here, including Leland Stanford and Hetty Green. Let's very briefly review their story. Leland Stanford made his fortune for investing and controlling the Lincoln mine in Sutter Creek. Perhaps you know him as a person who famously founded Stanford University in memory of his late son. Reportedly, he invested $5,000 in the mine and profited several $1 million out of it, which became the foundation for his later endeavor. He became one of the most influential people in California in the second half of the 19th century. He served as a senator from California and the governor of California later in his life. But his most important source of power and wealth was his prominent role in Central Pacific Railroad and Transcontinental Railroad as one of the what is called Big Four. These were the four rich businessmen who founded the Central Pacific Railroad. Later, we will discuss more about Stanford when we visit his home in Sacramento, when we visit California Railroad Museum and Old Sacramento, and perhaps even when we visit Stanford University. But what matters here is that his road to wealth and power started from his investment in Lincoln Mine in Sutter Creek. Another famous mine owner in this region was Hetty Green. Very, very few people may know her name now, but she was very famous in 19th century and early 20th century. She was a financier and businesswoman who was considered as the richest woman in America or even in the world. Because of her fairness in her practice and generosity, she was sometimes referred to as the Queen of Wall Street by her admirers. But because of her simple life and refusal to comply to the standard of ultra rich class at the time, she was also referred to as the Witch of the Wall Street by some sexist haters. Reportedly, she wore a single black dress until it was worn out before she bought a new one, regardless of the immense wealth that she was able to accumulate. And she owned the old Eureka mine in Sutter Creek and actually lived in nearby Jackson for a while. Now, we may hear a lot about people making a fortune in the gold mines or many who lost everything they had in pursuit of gold, but we rarely hear about the disasters that happened in these gold mines. And one of the earliest disasters in gold mines actually happened in Lincoln Mine. In 1873, while a group of miners were digging a new tunnel, they hit an old tunnel in the region where a lot of water and toxic gases were accumulated in that old tunnel. And that water and toxic gas quickly overwhelmed the miners. And out of 19 miners that were in that mine at the time, 9 of them died. But miraculously, 3 of the miners that survived the accident actually were rescued after being trapped in the mine for over a day. And just a year later, in another accident in the Amador mine, that one also in Sutter Creek, 5 more miners plunged into death due to failure in the braking system of the hoist. So these miners were in the cage and the hoist was pulling them out of the mine, and they were just 5 feet from the surface. That is like less than 2 meters from the surface when the brake failed and the cage fell into the bottom of the shaft nearly 2,000 feet down. And again, 5 of them died. Another topic that we almost never hear about it was the relationship and the conflict between the miners and the mine owners. One of the major events of the 19th century in the Amador County was what is called the Amador War. In 1860s and early 1870s, miners started to form unions to protect their rights. And in 1871, miners struck to demand higher wages and better working conditions. Obviously, mine owners fervently opposed this and did all they could to defeat the miners. And in order to do that, they asked the governor of California to send state troops to crush the miners. And the governor agreed. So several hundred state troops came to Sutter Creek and camped in this region and cracked down the strike. Now, interestingly, the general of the troop, the leader of those troops that was sent by the governor, was himself a mine owner in Sutter Creek, in a clear conflict of interest. In about a month later, the miners and mine owners came to an agreement and the miners returned to work. And the state troops, which many of them were just militias, returned to San Francisco. And interestingly, the governor and the mine owners didn't even properly compensate these militias. So there was a lot of discontent at the time. Now back to our story of mining industry. The gold mining operations continued until early 1940s when the United States entered the Second World War, because all the manpower of the country was dedicated to war efforts. After the end of the war in 1946, some of the gold mines reopened. However, by the late 1960s, almost all these mines were closed down for good. And the reason was not because the gold mines were exhausted, but because at the time, by law, the miners could only sell the gold to the government, and the price that the government was paying for the gold was not increased for a very long time. So it reached to the point that it cost more to extract gold than what the government was paying for it. And that was basically the end of the gold mining industry in California. But while the gold industry was gone, because of all these industrial activities, the region has a very rich industrial heritage. This heritage is manifested in what is called the Amador County Industrial Heritage Corridor, which includes the Knight Foundry, Central Eureka Mine, Miners Bend Park, Kennedy Mine, and Kennedy Tailing Wheel. For the rest of this episode, we will visit the Central Eureka Mine, but in the following different episodes, I will visit the Miners Bend Park and Knight Foundry. The other two, the Kennedy Mine and Kennedy Tailing Wheel, are located in nearby city of Jackson, which we will visit in a different episode later. As I noted, several gold mine complexes were active in the region. including Wildman Mine, Mahoney Mine, Union Lincoln Mine, Emerson Mine, Old Eureka Mine, South Eureka Mine, and the most famous and prosperous mine was the Central Eureka Mine. Nowadays, almost all these mines are gone, and only remaining sign of their existence are ruins of some buildings and structures and or foundation of some equipment and machinery. But the most significant remaining is the ruins of the Central Eureka Mine. This mine started in 1869 and was in production until 1958. And because the mine location was within the richest portion of Mother Lode, which is the name for the gold deposit in entire Sierra Nevada region in California, this mine, the Central Eureka Mine, was among the top three largest mines in the region. And as a result of this, in this period, along with the old Eureka mine, the Central Eureka mine produced nearly 2 million ounces of gold, which is equivalent to almost 125,000 pounds or nearly 60,000 kilograms of the gold. This much gold worth about $6 billion today. The depth of this mine reached to about 4,500 feet at its deepest. The only remaining portion of this huge complex is this steel head frame, which was installed in 1924. Before that, there was a wooden structure that this steel head frame replaced that. At the time, there was a wooden structure next to this steel head frame that contained an ore bin and a crusher. So the ore that was extracted and hoisted out of the mine was first sent to that crusher and pre-processed before being sent to stamp mill. We will discuss about these equipment later. This steel head frame right now is in a private property, but fortunately, as you can see, there is a public road up to next to this frame, and the frame is behind the private fence, but still you can see all around this remaining of the frame. Beside the remaining of the Central Eureka gold mine, which we just discussed, and the Night Foundry and the Miners Bend Park, which we will discuss in a different episode, another interesting museum in Sutter Creek is the Monteverde General Store Museum. This is a genuine and perfectly preserved one-room general store that is like frozen in time in 1971. Now, whenever I visit a museum, I always ask myself how this place became a museum. And this general store has an interesting story. In 1971, one day, the last owner of the store put a sign in the window. And the sign said, "This store will be closed for a few days." And the store remained closed for over 20 years until the city took over the store and reopened it as a museum. And as a result, most of the items and articles that are in this store are original ones that once were for sale in the store. The initial owner of the store was an Italian immigrant, John Monteverde, that along with his son established this store. They immigrated to the United States from Italy in 1860 and opened the store in 1896. After John's death, the original owner's death, in 1913, his two daughters ran the store until 1971, which, as I said, was the time they put that sign. Interestingly, because of the way this place became museum, nobody knows what exactly is in some of the mason jars and the boxes that are on display, because they were sitting on the shelf for nearly 20 years. And lastly, another interesting place is historic Sutter Creek Schoolhouse. This is a school that was established in 1856. In 1870, there was a fire, so the building was rebuilt, which is the same building that currently stands. Until its closure in the early 1960s, every year 200 to 300 students attended this school. Currently, the school building is being renovated to open as a museum to the public, so you can only visit the building in special occasions. As I said, two major attractions of the Sutter Creek is Amazing Night Foundry and the Miners Bend Park. Because of their importance, I will visit those places in two different episodes that will follow. I will include the link for those two episodes as well as the episode where we visited the Sodder's Fort in the description. Thank you, and until next time, keep reading, learning, and traveling and visiting interesting places. Bye.